We are live. Hello, hello, hello. My Wi-Fi today has been absolutely pants and it's just told me it's crap again, but I've turned it all off, so hopefully we're okay. I'm looking forward to this. And as I start every LinkedIn Live, there's a mumble just to give people a little bit of time to kind of join, be here with us. That allows us allows me to look like an idiot, really, if I'm honest. But if you are here early, please say hello in the comments so we can see you. If you're joining, say hello. And if you have any questions for Pete throughout, please do let us know, and I will pose those to Pete as we go through. But I'm really excited for this one, not only because I think coaching has a huge impact through what I've learned and kind of what I've done for the last kind of five years, but with Pete as well, I'm excited because I know how passionate he is around people excelling and the power of coaching in regards to that as well. So yeah, I won't mumble any further. Hello, Pete. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks
Good.
for asking. Good. I'm in flow.
Perfect. Nice for you to join us. Thank you for giving me your time to do this. I appreciate it. What I'll do to start with, like I always do, is I'll just quickly introduce myself and then I'll get you to introduce yourself. So I'm the director. My name's Richard. If you don't know me, if you're part of Pete's network, I'm the director of Employees Health. Employees Health is a workplace wellbeing and coaching company. We help businesses improve their work, the well-being at work, and help them educate their employees. I qualified as an executive performance coach through To Be Limitless and Peter's organisation this year, and so now we also do senior leader high performance executive coaching to help companies and senior leaders be their best and role model positive actions and performance and well-being. So that's kind of my story in a very brief nutshell. Pete, can you just introduce yourself first? So what you do, who you are, etc., etc.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. So, well, we share a surname, but we're not related. Unless
we share a middle name as well.
We share a middle name. I wonder how far we have to go back in our ancestors to find out where the link is. So I'm an executive coach. I'm also a partner in To Be Limitless. The business has been alive for about almost 20 years now. I've been in it for about 5 or 6 years and a partner for the last 2 years. And I'm happy to say that I'm one of those lucky people that absolutely loves what they do. I could not be happier in terms of the career that I've found myself in. And we work with amazing people in about 35 different countries, doing one-to-one and team executive coaching. And I was just describing it to somebody on a call a few moments ago. Grocery shopping is the first thing on your list of things that you want to buy. And typically executive coaching is the last thing on your list of things that you want to spend money on. But that creates quite an interesting kind of person that does invest money in executive coaching. Mm-hmm. And the gift of that is that we get to work with absolutely extraordinary people who want to keep getting better. So that's what I spend my time doing, working with people like that want to keep getting better.
Yeah, and I love it as well. You do meet some cool people throughout. So obviously there's a bit of a journey to you getting here. Can you talk us through like your background to how you're now a partner of To Be Limitless?
Yeah, well, I had two sort of parallel careers going on at the same time. On the one hand, I was in education. I was a school teacher, but on the other railway line, I was a hockey player. I was a field hockey player, and that was a real passion of mine. And both of those two careers were incredibly formative and have ultimately led me to where I am today. Education was an interesting one. They were important years of my life. I was in education for 15 years, but there was a bit of a push and a pull, and ultimately quite strong feelings to come out of the other side of working in schools. I loved teaching and I loved working with young people, but I always felt like there was something missing, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. But meanwhile, I was having a hockey career as a player, and then in the last 7 or 8 years of my playing career, I was a player coach. And I realized that I had this absolute fascination for human behavior. I realized that whilst I was coaching hockey, I didn't really understand any of the strategy that was going on. And I could hear other people talking about strategy, and I kind of didn't really know what was going on. Now I look back on it, I don't think they did either. But when I started coaching, my go-to to be successful with my teams was just to focus on the behaviors and the people. And I realized that, going back to my educational part of my life, the topics and the subjects that I was teaching actually weren't that important to me. It was all about the children. It was about their behaviors. And then whilst I was coaching hockey, it was less about the hockey and it was more about the people. There's a famous quote from Peter Drucker, the famous management consultant, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I realized that I was always playing the culture game. I was always playing the game of, can I just get the best out of these people? And that was the journey for me. It was all around the human factors and what we call now in the work that I do, the behavioral economics of high performance. And I was watching my wife, and she had an executive coach throughout her whole career, and I could just see her thriving and growing and really accelerating with her growth. And I felt like I was stagnating, and I thought, I want a piece of that. So I invested in my own coaching outside of schools where I felt like I wasn't getting the professional development that I was really craving. So I invested in it privately, and it completely changed my life. And I know that we're going to talk a little bit about strengths later on, but I sat down with a coach and I said, he asked me why I'd come to coaching. And I said, well, I want to finally fix my weaknesses so I can take myself to the next level. I feel like I've stagnated in my career. All of my colleagues seem to be doing better than me. What am I doing wrong? And he said, well, Pete, if you're interested in thriving and accelerating your career, it's your strengths we need to talk about, not your weaknesses. And that literally changed my life overnight, and it was the beginning of a process as well. So that's kind of led me to where I am now. And I ended up leaving schools pretty quickly after that and becoming a business owner and an executive coach, and now living right now what feels like the best life I could possibly be living.
In the center of Dubai, we might add.
Yeah, and I'm in Dubai. I'm based here. I've been living here for just under 10 years now. But I was saying it the other day, when you live in Dubai, you go to the airport in the same way that you go to bus stations. We are constantly flying in and out of the country. And my business partner has just arrived back into Dubai from London after being in Thailand. And now he's off to Kuwait this afternoon. And I've been to Turkey and South Africa, Joburg and Cape Town in the last short period of time, off to Thailand in a couple of weeks' time, and off to Italy immediately after the Christmas break. So we're really all over the world. But Dubai is an amazing hub, and it's a phenomenal city for people who are really striving. It's such a business-friendly place full of people that are so contagiously positive, and it's a really exciting. Sorry?
And focused towards performing. From the conversations I've had, there's more coaches out there. The performance element of people is focused towards kind of excelling.
I think Dubai has selected, in one way, it's a very diverse place. It's one of the most diverse places I've ever seen. But in the other world, there's a real commonality of the kind of person that comes to Dubai. They're people that are really striving. And I've seen so many amazing stories of transformation where people have come out with a career in one area and they've found a way to transform themselves and create something brand new for themselves. It's such a business-friendly, very fast-paced, optimistic, positive, contagiously positive place. And yeah, there's a lot of people that want to accelerate their performance out here.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so coaching, what is it to you?
It's a really good question. And I've trained a lot of people in coaching. And even after all the exploration and the scholarship around it that I've been a part of, and the people that I've worked with around coaching, so many people still struggle to define what it is, particularly if they're in an elevator pitch moment. What actually is coaching? And also it's got some negative stigmas I think those negative stigmas are really fading away now. But the way that I describe coaching is, coaching's just a synonym for applied emotional intelligence. It's a synonym for growth, development, better conversations, empathy, understanding, self-awareness. It's a synonym for all those words. And the other way I would describe it is, it's not, from the client's perspective, it's not something that's done to you. The client is the active participator in coaching. And you could look at some definitions of coaching. It's about, helping people unlock their potential. But ultimately, it is a synonym for growth and high performance.
Nice answer. Nice explanation of it. It is hard, and I find it difficult for people who don't do it, who are new to it, to explain what coaching is. And then they do a session and go, I didn't really expect it to be like that. And you're like, yeah, because I'm here to help you do this. It has that, and it has an impact. Most people walk away with like great goals and actions and make some nice changes as well, right?
Yeah, thank you. And I think actually you've tapped into what's probably one of the most important parts of it, is managing people's expectations when they come to coaching. And people often say that. They say, oh, crikey, after a couple of hours of coaching, I actually thought it was going to be something else. And one of the ways that we manage that at the beginning of our coaching relationships is to really manage the expectations with our new client. And one of those pieces is, if coaching is successful for the coachee, it will be because they made it successful. So the lead indicator of success in a coaching relationship is the readiness of the client. If the client is really ready for it and really up for it and has really got skin in the game and turns up engaged and they want to make something of it, then it's going to be transformational for them. If they have been sent to coaching and they don't want to be there, then it's not going to be transformational for them. It's all about the coachee. And I say this 1,000 times on our coach education program to our new coaches, saying, it's not about you. It really is not about you. And those few words there actually have a huge amount of cascading wisdom underneath it. And the coach can really relax into the process, and it's the coachee that's going to be doing all of the hard work. And if you can ready your coachee so that they turn up knowing that they're going to be doing the heavy lifting, then they're going to have some transformation. I often say to people that people come to coaching for one or all of these three reasons: change, clarity, or growth. And if they want it, then they're gonna have some transformation.
Yeah, 100%. I just jumped off a coaching session with a client, and I said, "How do you feel?" And he said, "Exhausted," because it is difficult thinking about change, thinking about overcoming challenges, thinking about internal monologue and changing all of that. It is difficult. That's when you make the most impact, right?
That's right. And we've talked about this, because I know you've got a background in well-being and looking after people's physical health as well as around their mental health and their sort of high performance behaviors. And if you're someone's personal trainer, who's doing the lifting in the session? The trainer's not doing the lifting, the client's doing the lifting. And but making sure that they know that when they turn up to the session, my most successful clients and most effective clients are the ones that turn up and I say, right, what's the focus today? And they turn up with a piece of paper going, right, this is what I want to do with today's session. They are ready to rock and roll, well prepared. And the ones that are the least successful are the ones that turn up going, oh, I haven't really thought about it. What do you think we should talk about today? And I'm like, well, this is your process. It's for you. So, really readying our clients to know that this is about them. It's their journey. Coaching's not done to them. It's a partnership, is really important. So,
100%. So, we look at coaching in a bit more detail and how it helps organizations. So, you've worked with, I don't know, probably thousands of different people in hundreds of probably different organizations. What do you see the impact for the workplace and the impact for the organization?
Yeah. So, I like to flip that question sometimes if I'm ever challenged on the ROI of coaching in organizations. And if we use that analogy of coaching is applied emotional intelligence, or better conversations, or growth, development, and transformation, and coaching is performance, and what's the ROI on not having any of that? What's the ROI on people that are not listening to each other? What's the ROI on people with limited self-awareness? What's the ROI on people in an organization that don't feel like they've got any direction? You know, what's the ROI on people that feel like they're not growing? And then suddenly we start to understand the impact of coaching. We pay attention to a lot of the Gallup research, and there was a lovely piece that came out in 2018 that found that growth and development scores higher than job satisfaction when it comes to what people want in their workplace. So people would prefer to feel like they are growing and developing than. So job satisfaction was things like, I've got donuts on a Friday, dress down Thursdays, and some rewards and recognition and clarity in my role. That's job satisfaction. But development and growth, that is having a leader in the organization or an external person working with you that's having a regular conversation with the employee about who they are at their best, who they could be, the growth journey that they're on. And if people feel like they are growing, then almost any indicator of performance you choose to measure is elevated through that. They'll stick around for longer, they'll complain less, they'll have less sick days, they'll steal less. They're less likely to sue if they do leave. If they do leave, they'll leave really well. Literally any indicator of performance can be improved if people feel like they are growing, and also if they feel like their strengths are involved at work. And again, we'll keep coming back to that, but the reason the link there is so strong is because people actually grow more through their strengths than they do through their weaknesses, which is counterintuitive for a lot of people to hear, but it's such an important insight.
Yeah. And I also feel like when we're focused towards progression, and that positive thought process of positive future has a massive impact on our mindset and our well-being, that allows us to turn up in a much better mood, with more energy and more enthusiasm about being there, unless everything's not positive and not kind of giving direction or focus towards something. And I think that's what coaching can also help with, right?
Yeah, well, I've once heard, I love that. You use the word purpose there, and I once heard a lovely description of coaching, that coaching is a conversation with purpose. We're moving in a direction, we're heading towards something. It's quite interesting, even within the microcosm of an individual coaching conversation, quite often you'll hear people saying what they don't want. But talking about what you don't want doesn't really move you in any purposeful direction. But if you can help somebody clarify what they do want, then you can start doing exactly what you just said there, purposefully moving in a direction that is compelling for me. And if you've got a workforce of people that are purposefully moving in a direction that's compelling for them, then I want to work in that organization, and I want to be having conversations with those people, rather than a group of people who are, and we know what that looks like, don't we, Rich, in an organization where all you can hear is people having conversations about what they don't want. That's the sign of a culture that is probably cracking at the seams that you don't want to be in. Yeah.
It's like I always look at it from a team sports type of view, right? When you're losing and things are going against you, that's when the internal chatter happens. But when you're winning and things are positive, then the culture around that, we're doing so well, like no complaining, we're having fun, we're enjoying this, we're here, we're part of this team, we're buying into everything that's going on. And I think that's coaching can help create that, because it helps create group togetherness and focus and remembering all the strengths and the positives of what you're doing, and realigning you with your direction, right?
Yeah. I mean, sports analogies are great, aren't they? They're so, you and I have both played sport for a long time, probably people on the call that have as well. And I just love how visceral the sort of components of human nature are, and how quickly they show up on the field of play. It's like you're compressing life into just 80 minutes or 70 minutes or 90 minutes, and you get to just see it unravel in front of you. And you used a beautiful example there of what do you like when times are good, and what do you like when times are bad. And it's all easy, isn't it, when you're scoring lots of goals and your team's winning? But how do you respond when the chips are down and you're on the back foot and the goals are going in behind you? And I just love that idea of working with high performing people, that when they're on the back foot, that's when they suddenly step up and start being at their best. And it's actually a signal, isn't it, to high performance people to go, right, I'm going to be at my best right now. The team's losing, we're on the back foot. I'm now going to be at my best. That's a really difficult thing to do. And I'm saying it out loud, like I can do it every day, and you can do it every day. And you know, I'm not removing myself from, you know, I can easily be that person myself that jumps into the drama triangle when things aren't going very well. But to have that other person to listen to you carefully and to ask you a few powerful questions that will just get you nudged back up above the line and going, right, how can I respond positively to this, is a great thing.
Yeah, 100%. It is that, isn't it? The powerful questions. I always kind of lead with that when I'm talking about coaching.
Yeah.
Hi, Sophie, first off. Hi, Sophie. Hi, James. I feel like James might be a friend of yours because he's talking about squash and how did that play out in your success there, mate?
I think I know who might be on the call there. Yeah, serious battles on the squash court, and I'm pretty sure he's responsible for the aching knee that I've got going on that is always reminding me of that time when we got a little bit too competitive. And I'm probably thinking about some of those times where there was nothing else to do in a Saudi Arabian compound but to play 10 hours of squash every single day.
Back when we could, mate. Back when we could. I'm going to look at the role of, or the impact of, coaching for senior leaders and how that plays out through the organisation. So having a senior leader who's got coaching, who's receiving coaching, what impact can that have for an organisation?
Yeah, well, you know, they're in an important role, and you know, I don't want to keep piling too much pressure on them because it's a tough place to be. And I've got every bit of sympathy for people who are in senior leadership roles, who are the first people that everybody wants to complain and moan about when things aren't going very well, but they have got so much responsibility on their shoulders. They're often squashed between a rock and a hard place, and a lot of people that are below them in the organization aren't necessarily aware of who they're reporting into, and they're in an incredibly challenging space. But then at the same time, almost anything good that is happening in that organization cascades from the senior leadership team. Whenever we have the opportunity to work in organizations, we always say, whatever we do with you, we want to start at the very, very top. Sometimes organizations will say, hey, can you come and work with our teams, please? Because, you know, we've got some of the engagement in our teams isn't very good. Can you come and work with them? And quite often always we will say, we're happy to work with those people, but before we work with them, it's you we want to work with first, because what you're doing at the top of the organization will be cascading to them. 70% of the engagement of people in an organization is cascading from the people at the top of the organization. So they are absolutely integral to what is happening lower down. There's a lovely piece of language that I was recently exposed to around extreme ownership. And the language was, there's no such thing as a bad employee, only bad bosses. So if you've got an employee that's struggling, well, what is it that I'm not doing, or what is it that I'm doing that's making that struggle happen? So they are such an important part of it. So they've got a lot of responsibility, but also they're in an incredibly difficult space. And the higher up they get to the organization, the lonelier it gets, and the less people there are to talk to and to learn from. And so, especially if you're the CEO of the business, you know, which direction do you go to? So executive coaching for the CEO is so important, and typically why the CEO ends up having to pay the most for it. And also in your space, Rich, around well-being, you know, that leader turning up to work and having a battery that is fully charged and understanding how to be at their absolute best is so important, because every movement that they make, every word that they speak is going to just cascade and have an amazing impact. I've just thought of a little analogy around that. So I think back to my school teacher days, and And every now and then I get a Facebook message from a kid that I taught, 20 years ago, and they'll say, "Oh, they'll still call me Mr. Turner. They'll say, "Oh, Mr. Turner, I remember that lesson that you taught me, and I remember that time when you said," and then they'll remind me of a sentence that I said 20 odd years ago, and I can't remember that moment, but that sentence has stuck in their minds for decades. And so, putting that back up to our leaders, the words that they say really matter. The way that they turn up, their body language, everything that they do and how they behave matters. And giving them a chance to constantly refine and grow and be at their best is really, really important, because the cascading impact of that throughout the organization is absolutely massive. The other thing that I've noticed about really high-performing people, could have said leaders there, is that they have just a thirst for learning. They see themselves as lifelong learners, and they're constantly thinking about how they can keep getting better. And, I'm going to be tough on the leaders that I work with now, but I see that as an obligation, that leaders have an obligation to keep trying to get better, because they have that obligation to the people that they're leading, because every single indicator of well-being and human thriving can be measured by their experience of their leaders. So this is going to sound a little bit grandiose, but great leaders and organizations can make the world a better place, because you know what it's like. You can work for a great organization, but if you've got a terrible leader, then it feels like you work for a terrible organization. So that leader being at their best is the reason why we exist as a company. Yeah, thanks for that. I was really getting into that answer. So
loved it, and you come full circle with it. Because my next question was going to be, so how does coaching impact that? But I feel like you answered it, because you said allowing people to turn up and consistently be better and to work on themselves. Yeah. Show up to their organization.
Yeah, and I'll see the leaders that I work with. I'll see them once a month, sometimes a little bit. Sometimes once every 2 months, sometimes once every 2 weeks, depending on the cadence. And it's an opportunity for them to say, right, these are my priorities this week. These are my challenges. And I really need some help with organizing my thoughts and organizing my mind about how I can go and be at my best in those challenges. And quite often, after they've said it out loud to me for 20 minutes, before I've even opened my mouth, they're starting to say things like, do you know what? I've got it. I know exactly what it is I need to do. There's kind of two ways of supporting leaders through coaching. So there's transactional coaching, which is, what are my challenges that are coming up this week that I'd love some strategic thinking partnership around? And then there's transformational coaching, which is more around somebody's growth over a period of time, and how can I continue to grow as a person so that I can keep being more impactful, and also learning how to look after myself in the process, because you know how many gray hairs you can develop after you've been in a significant leadership position after a few years.
Yeah, for sure.
A few just down here.
You've been in it for 2 years, mate, as well. So you've got a few more to come. Yeah, no, wicked. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that kind of really ties off coaching and what coaching is, and how it plays out for organizations and importantly senior leaders. Because if we're honest, they're the people who receive this normally. You're going to be your senior leaders, CEOs, the board level group, sometimes middle management, but they're the ones which will really kind of has a big impact. So it's nice to have that there. So thanks for sharing your insights on that as well. I'm very cautious that we're doing really well and good conversation time. But I don't want to miss any of the other bits we've got. So strengths. I know you're a big fan of this, and you've got me into this and got me to do my strengths and understand it in a bit better way. You are also a Gallup qualified or certified strengths coach. Is that correct? Yeah. Let's talk about them. Why are they so important?
Well, I can get really evangelical now. It's genuinely life-changing. I'll start off with a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I'll just talk personally. I had a 15-year career in teaching, and I can't really remember a time when anybody in any of the schools that I worked in had a serious conversation with me about my strengths and a serious conversation with how I could turn them into superpowers that could go and do amazing things. I had many conversations with leaders about what was wrong with me, but very few conversations that were genuinely serious about my strengths. And one executive coaching session with a psychometric strengths profile about what was right about me lit a fire in me that genuinely changed my life. I mean, I can, reel off the stats at you. 6 times more likely to be engaged in your job if you feel like your strengths are in play. 3 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life. Most people think that their strengths are over here and their areas for development are over here. It's the other way around. Your strengths are your areas for development. But most organizations are playing what we call the disease model of focusing on what's wrong with people to help them grow. And that is just the perfect ingredients for just destroying engagement, well-being, and thriving and performance in organizations. But it takes cognitive strain to be strengths-based. You have to work harder mentally to focus on what's right with people, because we've got a negativity bias, which gets us focused on what's wrong with people the whole time. So you can totally transform people by having serious conversations with them about what's right with them and helping them figure out ways of, my analogy for it is, imagine like a 50-meter swimming pool, and there's a turbine in the wall creating a flow of water, and at one end, and there's a turbine at the other end creating a flow of water going back in the other direction. So you've got these 2 lanes, and the currents of flow are going in different directions. And then imagine you've got 2 swimmers swimming side by side, racing each other in the water. One of them swimming with the flow, and one of them swimming against the flow. Now, they're both working as hard as they can, but for one of them, it doesn't feel like hard work. But for the other one, it is just destroying and depleting them, and they're burning out, and everything that they do requires so much more energy. And playing to your strengths is like swimming with the flow. And if you've got a team of people and you're running that team, and you can get that team swimming with the flow of their strengths, then watch them thrive and watch them do amazing things for your team. And that's why it's so important. And, not just for performance, but for happiness and everything else that you want to talk about. It is genuinely transformational. But as I said, most leaders in most organizations are playing the old model, focus on what's wrong with people to help them grow. And, good luck with that. Good luck with that if you really, really want to do something different and better. Yeah.
I think it really resonates with me, because I've that piece there around weaknesses are weaknesses normally for a reason, because you don't enjoy doing them. You haven't spent time doing it, or you aren't engaged in that process, right? So if you're not strong at it, you're not going to feel confident in doing it. You're not going to enjoy doing it. And so ultimately it's going to be a battle to do those and work on those. But if you continuously get your team to work on their strengths and understand how that, it's more enjoyable just in general, right? Doing something which is you're strong at is way more enjoyable than doing something you're weak at and find hard, right?
Yeah, more enjoyable, more energizing. Yeah.
And how much does that help you do the job well? And then if you've got a team of people, no one's strengths are going to be the same. So you can find those elements in that team to make sure that everybody's covering all the tasks to their strengths, and so everybody's enjoying it.
And that's what we want. We want teams that are totally different, full of different people. We talk about diversity. We want all of that variation within the team. But what's interesting is, in a weakness-based culture, we see all those differences as frustrations. Why can't this person be more of this? And why can't this person be more of that? Rather than going, wow, you're here, I'm over here, my strengths and weaknesses dovetail with your strengths and weaknesses. There's a team. And, high-performing people are not well-rounded. High-performing teams are. And that's the game that we should, in the sports world, and you and I come from that world, the sports world's always been strengths-based. All we're trying to do in sports is try and get players doing the thing that they're best at, and attacking the opposition where they've got a weakness. And the irony around this is that in a strengths-based culture, people are much more open, honest, and prepared to be vulnerable about what their weaknesses are anyway, because you can't ignore your weaknesses. Your weaknesses will sink your ship. So, what are you going to do? And but spending all of your day as an organization and around your professional development systems, just poking people around what's wrong with them, is just going to get gradually but surely, that's going to put the defenses up, and they'll just fight against it. And then they'll move on after you've depleted them. So, we are strengths-based in our organization. I know all the strengths of everybody in my team, and I know how to get the best out of them because of those strengths. And we're constantly having conversations with each other about what's right with each other. It doesn't mean that we don't challenge each other. We challenge each other really directly. But we've hired them because of what's right with them. And we're going to develop them through what's right with them. And that's what we do with our organizations. And do you know how nice it is to sit with a business and they say, oh, Pete, we're going to do some coaching with you. Tell me what it's going to look like. And we say, well, we're going to sit down with you and we're going to find out what's right with you as individuals and as a team. And then we're going to figure out how we point all of that rightness at your challenges. And that's exciting. That's inspirational. And that's what people want to be a part of, rather than let's figure out what's wrong with you and try and plug the gap, which, well, that doesn't inspire me. So,
Yeah, 100%. And one thing I always remember from our course and our learnings together is that obviously strengths, as you just said, impact us in such a positive way, but you always then clarified it with, you have to know what your weaknesses are. If you don't know what your weaknesses are, they will sink your ship.
Yeah.
Right? Can you elaborate on that in a little bit more detail, and how so we want people to work on their strengths, right? And we need them to make sure we know what they are, and what in our work processes and actions we need to take to make sure we're using those, but then understanding what the weaknesses are and how we stop that from sinking our ship.
Yeah, well, there's probably two levels to that, really. On the one hand, you want to get people, you want to get people into a role that allows them to play to their strengths more consistently. So the recruitment part of it's really, really important. So you've got to get that right. But then also on the other side of that, there's a lot of different ways of being a high-performing person. And, your way of being brilliant will be different to my way of being brilliant because of our strengths. But allowing people to have a strategic conversation about their strengths and their weaknesses and how they can position themselves at work in the day-to-day so that they can play to their strengths and manage around their weaknesses. If you're going into, I love to use rugby as a good example because it proves the point really nicely. Imagine you're going out into the rugby pitch and you're 5'5" and you're only 11 stone. Well, you need to know that information because if you don't know that, then you're going to get run over pretty quickly. So you need to know that you're probably going to be at your best in space where you're running into gaps. And you're probably going to be vulnerable running into a group of people who are your size, 6'4" and immense muscular. And you're probably going to get turned over pretty quickly. So it's as simple as that, really. It's about being strategic about your strengths and your vulnerabilities, and not beating each other up about them in the team, but supporting each other around each other's vulnerabilities. And then imagine a line down a piece of paper, and you got your job title at the top, and you write down your job description on that piece of paper. And everything on the left-hand side of the piece of paper is things in your job description that you hate doing, that you're not very good at, that depletes you. And everything on the right-hand side of that piece of paper is what energizes you. You love it. You get great feedback. You could do it all day. You'd even do it for free if you could. Now, if the left-hand side of the piece of paper has got your full job description, then maybe you need to think about another job. But hopefully, at least 3/4 of your job is on the right-hand side, and you can come up with some creative ways of making sure the left-hand side doesn't sink your ship. Ultimately, you've only got time. So where do you want to be spending most of your time? If you're spending most of your time fixing your weaknesses, yeah, you'll grow a little bit, but it will be limited. But if you can develop your strengths, you're going to grow quicker and faster and further. And you can go and do amazing things.
People do notice your weaknesses, but when you excel your strengths, I'm just thinking about, I'm thinking about you and how, well, I know one of your strengths is woo, right? Winning people over. And I know that stands out when you meet people. And I know the fact you work on your woo and you work on that strength. If you can really work on that strength or a strength of the human being, wherever it might be, and it's not, I'm not talking about you anymore, is that they stand out more than the weaknesses do when you excel at them. And so
it's one of my favorite coaching questions. Where do you stand out? And that's what we want. You want a team of people who are standing out in an area. Warren Buffett famously said, keep your circle of competence narrow. Like, where do you stand out? Find that place and then strategize around it. So when I was a school teacher, people used to say things to me like, Pete, you've got these lovely relationships with the kids and they seem to really like you, but, I really need you to focus more on this other stuff over here. So lovely relationships with the kids was always kind of just like a bit of a, they kind of a nice to have before they focused on the other bit. And then when I had my strengths-based coaching experience, they were like, Pete, you've got this gift with people, particularly at the beginning of a relationship, where people really warm to you and they're energized around you. What can you do with that? And then I started to think much more strategically about this strength that I had. And now all I think about is how can I create opportunities for myself to be in that space more often, because when I do that, great things happen for the business. So I strategize around that now, rather than thinking, it's a nice to have, but I need to focus more on this other stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. James has also asked a pretty cool question, quite long. Just give me a second. Strengths, I'm going to read it out to you. Strengths, yes, I love it. However, everyone in sport teams need baseline in several areas that may not be a strength. I prop forward and speed, for example. What's your opinion on minimal acceptable levels in weaker areas that must be worked on, or should they not? Communication is skills in business, as an example.
Yeah, I love that. And it comes up all the time. It's such an important question. You're right. There are baseline skills that you need. So, in the classic organizational one, you need to know how to use Microsoft in your business. Everybody needs to know how to do that. Basic stuff. You might not be a spreadsheet whiz like I know James is. But, there are some fundamentals, like in going back to the rugby analogy. Yeah, one person might be quick, the other one might be strong, but you all need to know how to catch. So there are those baseline pieces that, and it's really important that people don't hear this idea of strengths and then think, that's just an excuse to ignore certain weaknesses that I've got. Like, it's definitely not that. And I love that language that James has chosen around baseline skills. Like, absolutely, there are baseline skills that you need to have, and you need to, be able to have them. And it's harder for people at the lower end of their careers because they typically have to be a bit of a, they don't get the choice really around where they get to spend their time. And I know, for example, I've got vulnerabilities that I'm able to just employ somebody in my team to specifically fix that vulnerability that I have. But I'm a partner in the business and I can do that. So, if you're lower down in the organization, you might not have that luxury. So it's a bit harder for you, but I think it's a great shout. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking when you're just going through your kind of one of these kind of bits has sparked as you see, my active listening popped in, but sparked a full process around. There could be another whole conversation around kind of the importance of strengths coaching or strengths-based coaching to children and to schools and to teachers, about how this is so much more important than some of the other stuff which is going on.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I look at schools, my insight around schools, and I've got to be careful when I talk about this because it's actually, I have to regulate myself a lot. I care so much about education that strengths could be a game changer for schools. But the place where I am paying attention to more is the adults in the building, not the children. Schools often talk about being child-centric and actually at the cost of the adults in the building who, because we would give anything for these children that we care so much about, we often give so much of ourselves that you end up with a staff body that is just completely depleted. And the insight around schools that we do a lot of work around coaching cultures and organizations for schools is to give more meaningful attention to the adults in the room. So we try not to give too much advice to the businesses that we work with because we're asking questions, but if there was one piece of advice I would give to any organization, and definitely schools, it is that the adults in that organization need to have one meaningful conversation every week with their line manager. And I don't mean a transactional conversation about what's on their things to do list. I mean a meaningful conversation. The Gallup Chief Data Science Officer in the 2023 publication said that the most important habit of a great manager is one meaningful conversation individual conversation with their team members every week. And in schools, I see subject leaders, so the head of maths, the head of English, and quite often those people have a timetable, which means that the teachers don't get the attention that they need. And just whilst I've got the microphone, Richard, people often talk about giving feedback all the time. Got to give feedback to my staff. It's actually not feedback that they want. What they want is attention. That's what they want. And if you can give them the attention that they need, then watch them go. And actually, when they've got the attention, you can slide in the feedback and have important conversations about how they can improve and grow through that. But yeah, that is a real mission for us at 2B. And I'd love the opportunity to get into schools and share that particular insight, which we are doing with a few institutions.
Yeah, well, hopefully a few people are watching from here. I feel like we nearly slid into this next section really well. You mentioned coaching culture, which I'm passionate about. Culture for me is kind of the most important part of any organization, right? For a positive culture creates positive people. Positive people are happy living their best lives, right? So creating the culture is important. And there's different types of culture. Coaching culture is going to have a huge impact on the way people succeed. Yeah. Probably the best term, right? Turn up, be themselves, succeed, and perform their best. How do we create one? Sorry, I'll ask the first question. What does it look like?
Yeah. Well, so my insight around it is a lot of people think that you've cracked a coaching culture when you've got maybe a team of coaches who are all qualified, that love coaching and want to get out there and coach everybody in the organization. Actually, that's not the holy grail of the coaching culture. The holy grail of when you've cracked it, when you've got a coaching culture, is when you've got employees that want to be coached, who are seeking coaching out, because then you've got an employee body that is hungry for growth and learning, and they want to thrive, and they see coaching as the opportunity to do that. Remember what I said about earlier on about what makes a great coachee or a great client? They're people that turn up ready and willing with that growth mindset that want to take themselves to the next level. So that's when you've got it cracked. So that's where we're getting to. But then obviously, how do you get there? And there's probably lots of different answers to that question. But having a culture of learning, that's where we want to get to. I heard this lovely piece of language that I'm going to probably get wrong here, but I'm struggling to remember it. But it's something along the lines of, imagine an organization where learners replace employees. So you don't have employees in organizations, you've got learners, and they are looking for, where they're looking for learning opportunities that pay rather than looking for jobs. So actually you've got a culture of learners. That's what we want. If you've got a culture of learners, you've got a group of people that are doing that thing that you talked about. They're progressing, they're on a journey, they're compellingly moving forward towards something. And they keep getting better, keep getting better, keep getting better. And in a world where change is just all over the place, you want people that are adaptable to that change, and which is growth and learning. So creating a culture of people that want to grow. And that's why Gallup have changed the word manager to coach. Because if you've got a coach, or boss, a boss is just there being transactional, telling people what to do. But a coach is there focused on helping people grow and learn. And that's what we want. We want a group of people who are growing and learning everywhere. And now that rising tide of everything moving upwards. And if you've got leaders who look at their employees like learners, and the leader can see themselves as a teacher, that's an exciting. And I see that so much with great leaders who really do see themselves as mentors. And the thing that inspires them the most is getting the best out of people. And that's why so many people come into our coach training program, leaders that do it, because that's the part of their job that they love the most. I imagine an organization with, leaders that just love educating people, and a staff body that just loves to learn. And it all sounds very grandiose and idealistic, but that's the target. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because before we got onto this, I thought it was taking a slightly different tangent on this question that I thought you would have gone down, because I was thinking along the lines of, and it's more so to that second part, is that a leader, manager, is being a manager because he's asking questions of how they can become better. What can we do? It's question focused leadership more so than training or told led question or leadership. How do we overcome this? How do we do this better? How do we achieve this goal? And allowing a group to discuss that and come to the best answer for that team.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's situational. There's a lovely model around situational leadership, and it kind of depends on the environment. I was with a construction company today, working with there's at the lowest level quite a lot of large amounts of low-skilled workers working in a dangerous environment. Okay, so that leadership model probably requires something that's a little bit more command control, and that's absolutely great. Ultimately, what we want in an organization is employees who stand on their own 2 feet, who are not asking permission, who can make decisions, be proactive. If they've got a problem, they don't just turn up to the boss and say, I've got a problem. They turn up and say, I've got this problem, but I've also already got a few solutions and I wanted to run them by you. They're the employees that we want in our organizations. And if you've got a command control, directive style of leadership, then you're going to end up with a group of staff who are just going to be sat around waiting to be told what to do. So that's the obvious truth of the matter. The more we can recede as a leader and invite our employees to step up and step forward, then the more capable and empowered and enabled your employees are going to be. So, and that's the game that we play as leaders. With some of your staff, you might need to lean in and be more directive, but slowly and gradually receding. And as you recede, they step forward and they step up. And what that looks like at its best is leaders who lead through listening, who speak last in the conversation, who ask powerful questions that get the employee to think, right, how can I solve this for myself? My best analogy for it is the tennis analogy. That the employee comes to you with a problem and they've basically hit the ball into your court, and you just smack that ball back into their court and say, well, tell me what the 3 things you've already come up with to solve that problem are. And now all of a sudden they're doing the heavy lifting, they're doing the hard work and the growing and the developing that goes along with it. And ultimately that's what leader as coach is doing. They are allowing their employee to grow. Just one more piece on this, I absolutely love it, is bosses are the masters in the relationship, but leaders who coach, they make masters out of the employees. They make experts out of the employees. That's what we want. We want our employees to go and be experts. Now everybody's being elevated rather than everybody reaching downwards. So it's very sort of conceptually spoken about there, but this idea of non-directive leadership can be so powerful if we can resist the urge to be the solutions to everybody's problems.
Yeah, you don't need to be the person taking all the praise consistently, taking all the pundits, right? I always think, and I did a really nice podcast with a lady called Lucy around this term and concept, adult to adult coaching, adult to adult management rather than adult to child management, right? Think about that concept. If you go into an organization and you feel belittled and spoken to like a child, how does that make you feel? How does that make you perform? How does that make you learn and grow? But if you come to an adult and you're discussed, and you work and you have the confidence to open up and ask a question like I do with you as another adult, as I do with all my friends as another adults, how much better does that person turn up to the organization?
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love it. I mean, there's actually a word for it in the literature called transference, and that's what you've described. If you go into it as I'm the adult and you're the child, they will start to behave like a child and they'll become dependent and reference you, and it won't be an open creative relationship. They will just seek your approval and try to avoid your disapproval, and nothing exciting is going to happen in that space.
Completely. Oh wow, we are doing a very good job today. So I know we're going to close this up. Pete, I always finish our podcasts on this question of some sorts. What are your top 3 bits of advice from this podcast? People to take home.
Well, I'll be ironic because I'm going to give everybody some advice right now. but my advice is not to give any advice. So here's I'll set a challenge for everybody. So my thought leadership theme for October was about transformational listening. And the insight was that when most people listen, they listen for agreement and disagreement and relatability. Somebody will say, I went on holiday to Greece. And then you'll say, oh, I went on holiday. I've been there as well. And they listen for relatability. And so it's basically the quality of listening when you pay attention to what's happening is just not as good as it could be. So my challenge would be, the next time you're in a conversation, can you strengthen your coaching muscle by resisting the urge to share any advice or any opinions when you're in the company of that other person? I mean, I've loved this conversation because you've allowed me to share all of my advice and all of my opinions, and it's really empowered me and made me feel great, and the time's just disappeared for me. I've loved it, and you've created that for me by asking me questions about areas of real interest for me. So my advice, suggestion, or invitation is, next time you sat around the table having a conversation, see how long you can go without giving any opinions or advice, and then just do loads of active listening, just as an experiment. And whether it's at home or whether it's at work as well, you might have a one-to-one, and pick a low-stakes situation where nobody's going to get injured, and just see if you can resist yourself in that moment, and notice how hard it is. Notice, I mean, people might have dialed in because they already know about coaching here, but just notice how hard it is to resist that urge to give an opinion or give any advice. It's my number one invitation for you, if you choose to accept it.
Number two,
next time you're in a one-to-one, try a couple of these questions. This is at work. Tell me about you at your best. What is the best day at work you have ever had? How can I help you have more of those days? Which part of your job do you completely lose track of time in because you're so immersed in it? Try some of those questions the next time you have a one-to-one at work, and see how much of an impact that has on the employee that you're working with.
Lovely. Love that. Working to our strengths. Number three,
now this expands beyond coaching. Remembering that it's not about you could be the single biggest improver of your self-confidence that you ever have. So might get a little bit esoteric, but where there is no self, then there can't be any self-consciousness. And public speaking for a lot of people is a place of deep anxiety. And part of the reason is because they're worried about what people will think about them. Will they like me? Will they like my message? Will I be funny? Will I be engaging? Will I, me? And actually, in those high stakes moments, it's not about you. It's actually about the people in front of you. So the next time you're in a high stakes situation, or the kind of situation that creates social anxiety for you or self-consciousness, remind yourself that it's not about you, and put your focus outward and just pay attention to what's in front of you. That can be a profound improver of confidence. And I would encourage you to drop self-affirmations, because that just encourages you to think about yourself even more, which can make you even more self-conscious. So in an example, you're standing up on stage, you're presenting to 300 people. Rather than worrying about what they think about you, pay more attention to whether they are going to be brave enough to grab the challenge of your message, because it's not about you, it's about them. There's number 3 for you.
Thank you. Love that. Cheers, Pete. I've enjoyed that. I really have enjoyed that. I always enjoy our kind of conversations anyway. I always walk out with a nice positive smile on my face. And thank you for sharing that. I think it's been insightful. I hope people watching have found it insightful and useful. This will obviously go on YouTube for people to watch later dates also on here. But before I leave, where can people find you?
Very active on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And it's our lead social media channel. tobelimitless.com. So the number 2, the letter B, limitless.com is our website. And Yeah, there are our two main channels, and there's a lot of information on the website. We've got a YouTube channel there as well. But Peter Charles Turner on LinkedIn, that's where people can find me.
Yeah, lovely. And it's one-to-one exec coaching, group coaching, and teaching of the APC qualification as well. Strengths-based coaching, all the rest of it.
Yeah. If you've got teams that want to be high performance and take themselves to the next level, individuals at the corporate or the individual level, and then coach education. If people want to become a certified coach, an ICF certified coach, then we provide that training as well. And also we make friendships around the world. So if you're interested in just being a part of a community of great people that want to keep growing, and, you know, Rich, you're a part of that community as well. You've got the opportunity to we love to bring great people together and enjoy the rising tide of those relationships.
Yeah, don't take all my clients though, Pete. Thanks. No, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining. The next one is next week with Paul, where we talk around Wellbeing at Essentia, one of the largest organisations in the world. So that'll be a cool conversation around what they're doing there and how they're looking at wellbeing. But for now, thank you. See you all soon. Pete, stay where you are.